Times were tough, so I sold my soul. And I don't think I'll ever regain control. Devil looked me in the eye, now I look the other way. What else could I do? I just stared at the doorway and knew I'd rather be drunk with you. I'd rather be drunk.
Hey Internet, Dracofunk here, and this is episode 3 of season 2 of my Reusable space program. And right now, what I have done is there is an extra hug unit on the front of the Canterbury, which is the freighter which goes between the MUN station and the station in orbit of Kerbal Enterprise Station. And the reason it's there is this is not the one from Enterprise Station. This is one that I launched off screen, and the MUN station needs one, so I'm sending it there. And it's just hitching a ride, and I'm just going to crossfade through the whole journey. And the Canterbury's already done the trip and rendezvoused with Columbia Station in orbit of the MUN. And I will just go ahead and park this. I'm going to park it probably on the end of the ore tank on the MUN station. And so you can see I'm just visually kind of moving it over. And this, it's really easy to maneuver this because it's so small, and all the RCS is basically, it's just really in a predictable pattern, so it's really easy to fly. Unlike the tanker itself, which I'm going to probably dock right beside it on the RCS tanks. So the behind the scenes, I am filming all this, but I'm probably not going to release any of it unless anything exciting happens. I'm still doing the day-to-day stuff of trying to keep the fuel flowing and the ships moving around. So I think off-screen the mining ship has done probably 2 complete mining missions, and the Canterbury has taken a load of fuel back to Enterprise Station. And once it docks to the station, actually I'm pretty sure the MUN station has enough fuel that it can just basically dock and then fill its fuel tanks and fly back to Enterprise Station with a full load right now. And I'm just trying, I didn't come in perfectly straight, but close enough. You've seen me dock before. That was all done at 4 times time acceleration, but here we are just trying to get everything lined up. Alright, now the real mission for this episode is to send the first manned Kerbal mission to Duna. So we have, let's see, Garble, Sigbus, and Nelmore. These three Kerbals will be the first ones to orbit Duna. And I have them launched on this larger rocket. All the boosters have parachutes. To keep this reusable, and I'm sure I will recover all those fairing pieces. And here is the craft that will take them there. Now, this craft is inspired by one that Scott Manley built like 10 years ago to do his interplanetary missions. I think his first interplanetary missions. So I figured I could build a version of it. It's not exactly the same, One of the reasons for that is they changed how back then nuclear engines also used oxidizer, and now they don't. So I had to slightly redesign this for the newer version, and I know I have a lot of my other ships have enough Delta V to get to Duna, but I just wanted to build this one, so that's what I did. So I don't think I've done it yet. I will name this ship the Manly. Right now, I'm just trying to get my maneuver node as close as possible, so I'm messing with it a lot. And you're going to see that I don't quite get an encounter yet, but I get close. And it's going to take me a long time to get an encounter, and I'm going to have to do a lot of fidgeting and fiddling and moving around. And then once I do get an encounter, I'm going to do a whole bunch of fidgeting and moving around to get into the orbit I want. And that's going to be most of this episode. I'm still just trying things with the maneuver node, and I probably could have just cut this out. But one of the things I want to do differently during this season was I noticed last season a lot of my episodes had a lot of cuts and edits and just unnecessary things. And I want to basically, this is what I did. So I'm just going to show what I did. And looking back, man, I spent a lot of time just trying to get as close as I can and messing with the maneuver nodes. But now I have a burn, and this burn's going to take a long time. Of course, I have this footage sped up. But yeah, so this is going to take, this is a 9-minute burn. And I have the Delta V over there. This has almost 8,000 meters per second of Delta V, just under, about 7,800, I think, at the start. And I'm going to arrive at Duna with almost as much Delta V as the interplanetary probe started out with. But with the one nuclear engine, this craft doesn't accelerate very quickly. I guess would be the biggest downfall. I'm pretty sure Scott Manley's craft didn't have the solar panels on there, at least not in that configuration, so that might be something different. I did put a docking port on the front, and I played with the idea of actually sending up some infrastructure with this craft, but I didn't do that. I think I'm going to use this more as an exploration craft than a tug. And the next mission to Duna will start bringing the Duna infrastructure, because I am going to be building at least 2 space stations in the Duna system. I want to put at least, I would like really to put 3 colonies on the Duna surface, maybe 4, and at least 1 on Ike. And I'm going to be setting up mining operations between Ike and Duna, just like I have in the Kerbin system. And the real challenge there is that everything has to be brought from Kerbin. And right now, the interplanetary probe is still in orbit of Duna, and that's because the transfer window back to Kerbin has not yet occurred. It just happened to be that once it flew there, the next transfer window was the transfer to Duna versus the one coming back to Kerbin. So now we are really close to Duna, but not close enough for an encounter. So I'm watching. If I had the one thing that this craft doesn't have a lot of is RCS. So normally I would just use the RCS to kind of fudge getting close to the orbit, but I don't want to do that. I want to use the Delta V and the nuclear engine, so I'll kind of use the RCS to figure out which is the best way to go. And this is kind of like crab walking to get my approach closer. And I'm still doing this within the sphere of influence of Kerbin. Because really, the sooner you do your corrections, the less delta V it's going to initially take. And I'm just hovering my mouse over to figure out the closest approach. And there will be at some point during all these maneuvers where it'll stop bringing closer and start going further. And then I have to change direction. And I was almost at 500,000 kilometers. I'm already down to 450, which is not yet enough for an encounter. So I don't actually have an encounter of Duna at this point in time. So if I were to not do anything, I would just fly right by. Because I'm not quite close enough to be affected by Duna's gravity. And so I'm just doing this like kind of crabbing maneuvers, and I'm probably launched a little bit later than I wanted to for my Duna encounter. But I knew if I could get close that I'd be able to kind of fudge my way to get an encounter. And I could have probably done this with the maneuver nodes, but it just seemed a little bit finicky. And it wouldn't have cost too much more to wait till I was out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, but I figured I can just do this now. And really what I'm trying to do is get a Duna approach, and once I do that, I will set up another maneuver node outside of Kerbin's sphere of influence and I want to get my periapsis down to around 400 kilometers. But right now, I'm just trying to get an approach or an encounter with Duna. And some of these maneuvers, I'm actually adjusting my inclination because Duna isn't on the exact same plane as Kerbin. It's really close, but not close enough. I mean, it is close enough that if you don't adjust your plane, it is still possible to get a Duna encounter, but not as close as I'd like. I'm down to 339,000 kilometers. And I went a little bit too far there. So, all of these just little bitty maneuvers kind of helped to get it there. And at this point, I'm so close. But I'm gonna wait till I'm out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, so maybe I can set up a maneuver node that'll actually get me closer. And now it's kind of doing the same thing I was doing with maneuvering, and there I have an encounter. So I will go ahead and do this small burn. And I probably could have done it for a little bit cheaper if I would have done it within Kerbin's sphere of influence, but it would have been... this has less variables in it. And I have plenty of delta V, so another 124 isn't going to be that much. And I know I could have done this whole thing a lot more efficiently, but that's okay. So now I just want to see my periapsis is really high. And I'm going to kind of do some of the same things I was doing. And you can see my encounters actually blinking in and out. So I'm going to make another... well, I tried making a maneuver node to try and get my periapsis down to where I want it. And I want to get as it doesn't have to be exactly 400. But there, I've got it really close. It's only 45 meters per second delta V. Again, I have plenty of delta V. Now, if you saw, what was it, the last episode, where I was having my encounter with Duna, when I would time warp, would change. And that was causing the alarm clock to mess up. So this time, I'm going to set up the alarm clock for the sphere of influence change, but I'm also going to set a manual alarm clock. And right now you can see I've got my periapsis close, and I was just kind of manually burning. But now I'm setting up that sphere of influence change, and I'm just testing it, and it's not changing right now, but I am going to set up a manual one just in case, because I don't want to have the issue where I set it up and I'm relying on the alarm clock and it suddenly changes for no reason. So I just have that manual one set up, and I have it set up for like a couple minutes ahead of time. And we'll just time warp. And it seems to not be changing this time, which is weird that it did so last time, but that's okay. Here I am. I'm orbiting the correct way. I'm really on a good equatorial plane, or at least pretty close. So I'm actually really happy with the intercept I got. I'm not going to have to do any weird extra maneuvers to get into the orbit I need. So I'm just going to go ahead and burn retrograde to get captured by Duna, and probably circularize. I might not circularize completely to a 400 kilometer orbit. But I want to get below 1,000 kilometers, so I'm below the relay network. But as you can see, all the Kerbals are really excited. They've done it. They are now captured within Duna's sphere of influence. I want to get it below 1,000 so I don't actually accidentally get into Ike's orbit. And there I am. And yeah, I want to rename the ship. And we've done it. We are now We've made it to Duna. And all we have to do now is make it back to Kerbin, and we'll go ahead and just do that next episode. And I might try and do both of them at the same time. I don't know. But hey, we have a Patreon. And, you know, you can also like and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching my reusable space program, and check out our other stuff on our channel.